Chris Bowen's latest CO2 insanity is going to claim its first 2 victims this year. So only like 100 sleeps to go or something. A little bit like Christmas, only in hell. And now we know exactly what vehicles they're going to be. The Ford Everest and the Isuzu MU-X in the record books. At least I suppose we're still saving the planet, which is kind of awesome. In other news, Australia is still the world's biggest exporter of coal and number 2 in a photo finish against Qatar for exporting liquefied natural gas. Big pimpin' on the CO2 front on those two. So, you'd agree, this all makes complete and utter sense and is virtually impossible to construe as some kind of card-carrying governmental cluster. I'm John Cadogan from Expert.com.au. New cars cheap, as usual, but Australia only. Website, code. The headline here is, of course, that Ford is going to kill the 4x2 versions of the Everest, which would be the lightest variants of Everest with the lowest CO2 emissions. And although Isuzu hasn't actually cowboyed up yet and admitted it publicly, they've started alluding to the imminent death of some or all of their 2-wheel drive MU-X wagons. That seems to be a done deal also, and just the timing of the announcement is currently up for grabs. Basically, regulations instigated to reduce CO2 are going to kill the quote-unquote cleanest variants of the Everest and MU-X, which would be a fine example of your tax dollars at work. No news yet about the Honourable Mr. Bowen's pending Mensa application, but on balance, it's not looking all that good. This video is sponsored by me, and the core message: do not buy an EV. Get rooftop solar instead. There's a much better return on investment. It's a fraction of the upfront cost. It also lasts a lot longer than an EV if you buy high quality components, and it does not attract annual fees such as Rego and Sky High comprehensive insurance. Rooftop solar divorces you from coal, which, let's not forget, is the nation's largest emitter, as well as sky-high electricity bills and the inevitable future increases there. My bill for January went from nearly $600 last year to just under 200 smackers this year. And we flogged the friggin' air conditioning too this year, dude. Working from home, etc. Because, frankly, it has been stickier than 2 rats doing the wild thing in Satan's jockstrap, which I'm told is quite a common occurrence in hell. Something to look forward to, perhaps. Get solar plus a battery, or add a battery to your existing solar array. This way you can stockpile surplus electricity produced during the day on site and use it in the evening when electricity is more expensive than platinum, almost. And you can protect yourself against inevitable power failures by outage-proofing yourself. Nothing says we made the right call there, honey, quite like every other house in the street enveloped in darkness, except, of course, yours. I've got the best solar partners in the universe too. These guys are good. They're so good. I know them personally. They sell only high-quality components with solid onshore support. They've got in-house engineers who consult on every installation, and they will not leave you hanging. Go to autoexpert.com.au/solar and just fill in the form. That's basically all it takes. There's no obligation. Tell them or me to go to at any time, which is fine by me, frankly. They designed and installed my system on the roof, 2 stories up in that general direction, which has been great, frankly. autoexpert.com.au/solar, link in the description. And now, upliftingly, back to me and the imminent death of those 2 lardy-assed 2-wheel drive wagons. Under the Bowen-driven Genius CO2 reduction plan, which is designed to make cars more affordable, hallelujah, Everest and MU-X will actually get more expensive. Who the fuck could have predicted that? The cheapest two-wheel drive Everest, the two-wheel drive Everest Ambiente, which is such a masturbatory name, frankly, for the poverty pack. It's 54,240 smackers plus on-road costs. And the equivalent 4x4 Everest Masturbation Poverty Pack Special is 59,240. More components, higher price, go figure, it's $5,000 more, basically. This, of course, is something of a, how can I put it metaphorically, sandpaper dildo for anyone who can only just stretch to a new Everest. $5,000 extra after July the 1st, so yay. Feels like 32 grit to me, so thanks, Chris. Well done. Bureaucracies obviously thrive on bullshit, don't they? And the Bowen bullshit bureaucracy is especially ravenous. The two-wheel drive Everest wagons will therefore meet Dr. Kevorkian for one last fateful consultation on the production line at the end of May. After that, it's all Snow White and no Prince Charming. Just a long, long, uninterrupted sleep. And why is this even a thing? You've got to ask yourself that. Under the Bowen bullshit bureaucracy's plan and its disgraceful new vehicle emissions standard, two-wheel drive Everests are categorised as passenger vehicles. They actually call them Type 1 vehicles, just like diabetes. Whereas the 4x4s are light commercials, which they call Type 2. Type 1 vehicles have a lower CO2 limit than Type 2, even though they've got exactly the same body shell. That lower limit would be 187 grams per K driven versus 215 respectively, like for the Type 2. The regulations kick in on July the 1st of this year, upliftingly, with hefty fines for any breaches per vehicle, the upshot of which would be a roughly $1,400 Bowen bullshit bureaucracy fine for every two-wheel drive Everest sold in the latter half of this year. Those fines increase annually after that, if the CO2 doesn't come down in totality. Things suck even more enthusiastically for Isuzu on this, just like ex-wife number 3 on a cocaine-fueled bender, which is kind of fun, but ultimately she just had to go, dude. It wasn't workable. The fine there for Isuzu, not ex-wife number 3, is going to be about $4,000 for every 4x2 MU-X and $900 on the 4x4 MU-Xs because they exceed their Type 2 limit also. Isuzu is something of a net CO2 belcher. And this certainly is not in the brochure. Isuzu will ultimately not survive the Bowen bullshit set of ineffective CO2 constraints. That's pretty clear. The question there is not if they're going to leave Australia. The question is when. Ford sold 26,500 Everests last year, which was a surge of 76% on 2023, while Isuzu sold nearly 18,000 MU-Xs, which was up a healthy 27% also. And obviously the big sellers in those ranges in both camps are the 4x4s. The 4x2s are out the front in the discount tray. I get that. The official sales figures actually don't break it all down into 4x4s and 4x2s separately, but they're both heavily skewed towards the 4x4s. So in terms of who this is going to affect, it's not going to affect most MU-X or Everest buyers, but it's still going to affect some. And the real victims here are going to be the businesses that need kind of rugged wagons with a bit of ground clearance, but not necessarily 4x4 capability. The kinds of businesses that need to send people out and they need to just straddle the crown of the road in some busted-ass dirt track in outback bumfuck Australia kind of thing. I'm talking about, farmers and related agribusiness sales and service forces, etc. They're going to pay 9% more for their Everests after July the 1st, which is the premium that Ford charges for 4x4 for a feature that these people really don't need and didn't really want in the first place. And that increased cost, obviously, is going to be passed on to you, dude, the consumer. Great. Sure, they could buy a 4x2 ute or something with the clearance because they are Type 2 vehicles with a higher limit, but if they need the wagon functionality for their job, they're going to have to deck it out with a canopy, which is never as good as a proper engineered up wagon, and it's going to be just as expensive once the modifications and the fit out are complete. Meanwhile, at a national level, we are still pushing that coal and LNG on the rest of the world so enthusiastically, like the least climate-conscious cartel ever. And Chris Bowen and the clown-in-chief above him have spent 3 years now on more important stuff like, pronouns and minority appeasement, etc., plus failed initiatives at monumental taxpayer cost, such as carbon capture and storage, which is a fantasy, and the fantasy of green hydrogen, the related myth of green steel. I get with the program, dude. It doesn't work. It's not going to scale ever. There are intractable physical problems with all of that stuff. They defy solution, even with the best brains in the business on it. And we, the taxpayer, via them, the shitheads, have paid organisations such as Ampol endless millions of our hard-earned taxpayer funds to fail to install EV chargers because, net zero. That's progress. They've allowed the Whyalla Steelworks to collapse while they give our iron ore and coal away, more or less, and refrain from supporting something as obvious as Australia becoming a global steel production powerhouse. Why would we want to do that, dude? We've only got massive reserves of the raw materials needed for a product which is intrinsic to the evolution of advanced civilization everywhere on friggin' Earth. What do I really think? They're too busy playing with their nuts in Parliament House, and they can't see further than the next freaking press conference. Like, it's all about the soundbite, dude. Nobody cares about substance anymore. Obviously, this is why they haven't had to devote the time to address things like the epidemic of 30-year-old trucks trotting across our capital cities every damn day, taking containers to and from the ports. Because look around, that's exactly what's happening. These are the vehicles with actually problematic emissions. There are no emissions controls on many of those trucks doing this kind of work, and that's completely okay apparently because net zero. Shit, yeah, dude. These unfiltered trucks belch untold actual toxins under load every day in built-up areas that are densely populated, past the schools your kids attend, etc. Think about that. But at least we're dealing with the thorny problem of two-wheel drive Everests and MU-Xs. That's us. Bowen's bullshit bureaucracy has effectively nailed that coffin shut, so well done, you fucking genius. This is, of course, something to think about in the lead up to the upcoming election when you get to fill in their report card.